name is Shabaka Hutchings. I was born in London, moved to Barbados, where my family is mainly from, at 6. And I lived there from 6 until 16. Then I moved back to England, continued my education. While I was in Barbados, I started the clarinet at 9, playing all kinds of music, classical to calypso to reggae, not that much jazz, but a little bit of improvisation. Just whatever, I played along to the radio a lot. I was interested in just playing songs. When I moved to England, because I was doing the classical grades, I kept on doing classical music and did a degree in classical clarinet at the Guildhall School of Music. Did the 4-year conservatoire course there, and then just started working as a gigging musician, doing whatever gigs I could find. And that was everything from studio session work to kind of standards jazz gigs to free improv gigs, and then gradually started creating my own bands. The first one was Sons of Kemet, then came a collaboration group, the Comet is Coming, and then the last one that was formed was being Shabaka and the Ancestors. So the way I got introduced to Jonny Greenwood was through a trumpet player who I used to play a lot with, Yaz Ahmed, and I played on 2 of her albums, and she was playing with Radiohead at the time. So she played on, I think it's King of Limbs, and did touring around that time. So he started to check out, I think, people that were associated with her, and he came into contact with a group that I was playing with at the time called ZU. So he just sent me an email one day saying, hi, I'm Jonny Greenwood. My day job is with Radiohead, but I'm writing a score at the moment. Do you want to come in and do something? And he said he's written a bunch of classical music, but it sounds a bit too restrained. So he sent me all the scores and said, can I just pick through sections and jam with them with a band of my choice? So that's what we did. We went to the Radiohead studios and we just jammed on his music. So the signing to Impulse Records was something that happened pretty organically, and it happened from their side. I was just making records with the Comet is Coming and Sons of Kemet, then had a gig in New York and they asked for a meeting and said that they're interested in our work. Do you want to, continue a partnership with them? And it was great because the album from Sons of Kemet had been completed at the point at which they asked us to work with them. And similarly, the album for the Comet is Coming was well underway, so it wasn't a case of get a deal and then make an album. It was a case of we're on the track, we're on a kind of trajectory, and the label came and met us at a certain point, which allowed us to actually propel ourselves further, which is a great situation to be in.
Did you already go into Your Queen as a Reptile with the concept in mind? And can you talk a little bit about that?
In general, I don't go into albums with concepts in mind. It's going into an album, a period of writing, and trying to be sensitive to the ideas that are around at the time that I might be thinking of, which is a hard thing in itself, to just try to articulate what the zeitgeist is and what things are actually in the back of your subconscious, or you're trying to evaluate within yourself. So I had a period of writing the music that would become on Your Queen is a Reptile. Then it was that kind of long process of trying to depict what my thoughts were. So the first basic question were, who were the female figures that we look up to? And for me that's like the foundational question. Who, if we think back about who are the male figures who give us inspiration? We can name tons of them. Even in terms of America, you've got the founding fathers. There's no equivalent in terms of any type of maternal figure. So then it was a process of trying to find, this was an individual thing, who are the women that inspire me if I seek out their stories, and trying to find a way to link that to some kind of album narrative, in a way that other people can try to have agency and do it for themselves. And in terms of the kind of Queen is a reptile. I think it's all kind of gathered into the same place of once you find your female, your lead, in some ways your leaders, historical or otherwise, then it's a matter of appraising the leaders that we have at the moment, you know. And then obviously, ironically, we do have a queen in England, you know, but the kind of proclamation that your queen is a reptile was done to throw the assumption of this system of power into the realm of myth, and kind of say, look, the fact of the queen being anything is a myth that we all live by and we've all decided to abide by on a societal level. So if we just see the myth for what it is as a myth, let's try to see if we can supplant it with some other myths, you know, the myth of, you know, Harriet Tubman being the queen, or Angela Davis, and so on and so forth. The process for the Comet is Coming that we employed for our latest album is slightly different for Sons of Kemet. With Sons of Kemet, or even Shabaka and the Ancestors, I write all the music out, and then the process is that the guys take my written work and put their own soul into it, and I write it for the specific musicians that are going to be playing. Whereas in the Comet's Coming, we get into a studio and we jam for hours and hours and hours. And then Dan and Max, as the producers of the album, take the time to filter through all the stuff that we've done and find the melodies inside of them and produce them into coherent, you know, songs. And we're jamming not for the pleasure of jamming, we're jamming to be compositional. So in that jamming process, you know, we're all listening insanely to each other, and we're trying to create some kind of compositional structure. So in some way, it's not like we have hours of material, but there's some form into whatever we jam, and we jam out what sounds like kind of very coherent, punchy tunes. You know, and then sometimes you might go back into the studio and polish up some things, but in general, it's a jam band that gets refined into a kind of fully formed, you know, unit, and then we rehearse and learn the things that we have jammed and then produced into tunes, and then that becomes a set. So We Out Here was conceived by Giles Peterson by his Brownswood label, and this is a project I was involved with both as a musical director and a performer, contributed one tune towards it. It's trying to take a snapshot of what's happening in London at the moment. Because there's lots of bands and there's lots of young bands that are finding their voice. And it's not definitive because there's no way of depicting all the bands that are around, but it's a good cross view of what young audiences in London like at the moment, you know, and what the bands that are really doing it for them. The idea for the Beatles cover or impression, however you want to say it, that we did on Impulse Records with Shabaka and the Ancestors, it was a really interesting one because I've never listened to a lot of the Beatles' work, and I know they're great, and I've heard the songs like She Said and Michelle that I know are great tunes, but I've never just checked them out a lot, and I had not heard the tune that they told me to do before. But I said, you know, if they're that great, I shouldn't have to revere them beforehand. It doesn't work like that. If they're good songwriters, they'll be material for me to work with. And I actually was working on the tune, on the arrangement, while I was on holiday in Ethiopia. So I remember being in this hotel in Addis and just kind of like listening to the tune almost like it's not a tune, like it's just a bunch of musical information. So I'd kind of listen to like a portion of the melody, write it down onto paper, and then take that as a starting point for maybe a couple of notes or a couple of bars, then go back to the tune, listen. Whenever I hear anything that sticks out in my head, I transcribe it onto the paper, And then that went on for the whole tune. So I really didn't try to copy the melody or use the song as a song. It was just the song as building blocks for whatever it sparked in my creativity. So yeah, I just went through the whole tune. If every time I heard anything that was any good, or that, not any good, but that I thought was interesting, I wrote it down and then just saw what direction my mind could take it in. Hi, this is Shabaka Hutchings and you're listening to KUCR 88.3 FM, Riverside.